Hollow footfalls echoing through empty corridors. The primal reaction of flesh brushed by an unseen touch. Shadowy figures slipping between the moss-covered boles of ancient trees. Strange calls issuing from not quite human throats, piercing the stillness of the night. Unusual lights and objects streaming across darkened skies. Stolen minutes and a void filled with obscure and disturbing memories. These occurrences and more are called by many whispered names in many countries around a world we believe we know so well. All of these things share a common thread. I'm Charles Romans, and welcome to the pathways leading to the Shadows of Legend.
Hello, this is Charles Romans, your host for Shadows of Legend. Today we're speaking to Mercedez Lucke Benedict. She's a paranormal documentarian, the author of a new book on remote viewing and healing. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me on your amazing show.
Well, thank you for being on the show. We really appreciate it. And you have a lot of interesting things to share. It's difficult to find out where to start. So I always tell people, start from the beginning. When was the first time that you experienced anything that might be construed as the strange or the paranormal?
Okay. Well, I think when I was a child, there was a lot of things that were happening at a young age. For instance, there was a time I remember when I was, I think, about 9 years old that 9 or 10, I had a dream, and the dream was my grandfather, and who lived in Arkansas at the time, had a big ranch, and I was sitting in his little kitchen area, and he was sitting there with me, but he wasn't talking to me. And I'm like trying to say, Poppy, Poppy, just trying to talk to him, but he wouldn't. It was very upsetting. And I remember I had this horse, this toy Appaloosa horse with me because I had a bunch of horse, model things like that I always carried with me. And I remember that. I still have that horse till today. It's right here on my piano. But the next day, my mom told me that my grandfather had died. So I know that my grandpa had come to say goodbye to me. And that was a big moment in my life. I was very intuitive as a child.
Yes.
But there was some things that occurred, I believe, at some points in my life that kind of dampened that stopped that. And I really had intuitive abilities, most of my life, but it was almost like it was blocked out. But there were times when I reached a certain age later, that as I started doing singing and stuff and writing more songs, I would get these songs in those like threes, and then the songs would come, the whole thing, I'd see it. So I felt like I was downloaded with certain things. And so there was a lot of that going on, but it wasn't until later when I actually experienced a car accident where I was rear-ended at a light in Tucson, Arizona, that my body literally, it was like the woman, I should have died, basically. I think I would have died, but I somehow didn't, and I believe that God has helped me with that. So I literally remember flying up out of my body and looking down at myself in that car, and the car was completely smashed on the right side, and I was pinned in. But I didn't. Then I whooshed back in, and then that began a series of. It's a really bad time in my life, very bad time. But it was through that accident that all of a sudden I started to sense and see lights in the body. I'm a therapist, and I was working. I was just about to graduate school, so this was at the beginning of my being a massage therapist. Before that, I was always a singer-songwriter, and I had a family band. There was a divorce. So there was a little bit of trauma that was happening leading up to that incident. And I believe that it was a wake-up call for me that was about to shift and alter my life forever. And as I started to recover, which I was seriously injured and couldn't even walk, but I did start to recover with the help of this doctor, Dr. Steve Swidler. And as I was able to learn to walk again, I was in another car accident. So this other car accident, yeah, and this one was death defying. I mean, like, I rolled the car. I was coming back from, it was a Thanksgiving holiday. I had my son in the car, and we rolled my car on the freeway in a sandstorm. So I like went over like 13, 14 times. We did not hit anybody. And it felt as if we were both about to die because we were rolling. And every window was knocked out. The whole car was totaled again. But yet I felt as if once it started to roll, I felt this cocoon come over myself and my son. I felt as if I was in a cocoon. And luckily, we survived that. Most people don't on that freeway. There's a lot of deaths on that freeway because of sandstorms. And
Well, I
it
was
was
going to
just,
say that
yeah,
the
it
fact
was
that
really,
you didn't hit anyone else when this accident
oh
happened
God.
is
Yeah.
nothing short of miraculous.
Yeah, it was like it was really a miraculous, horrible event for us. And but that was pretty much sealed the deal there, as whatever happened to me the first time when I started seeing lights and seeing what I mean by lights, I see literally lights, like scans of lights throughout the body, especially where pain was. If anybody's pain, my pain, anything where I would see I could see what was happening, and I was all of a sudden became somebody that could feel inside another person's body just
Okay.
by being around them. And so then it just multiplied. After that, I started to, um, my son as well, he started to see spirits, and I started to hear and feel things happening. And it was a slow progression, almost like I call it like a video game where like I couldn't see it first, but I could feel, and then I could tune in and hear, and I could all of a sudden all the senses went through different levels to where it looked like the spirit people were like behind a veil, and then now they're not. I mean, they're absolutely just went from one level to the other where I could see what was happening. And so I've done my work with the doctor, and that was in that practice. It was a very medical practice, holistic dental practice, but yet I was allowed, as the pain therapist and the TMJ therapist, head of the program, to have my own space. And I worked and honed my gifts, and I became like I would call a medical intuitive. I would be given a message, and I would know what to give that person, like what that person needed as a holistic remedy, or what so it began, my career really was wrapped in that for a very long time. And that was very paranormal in a way, because I was working with a lot of amazing people from different places all over the world. They would come there, and most of them were very spiritual people,
Yes.
and like monks and high monk people, and Tibetan monks. And then we had a lot of the people of the Native American tribes, like the medicine men and women, would come there for us to work on. And plus, it was just a wonderful healing space too. It was a healing center. So I got to meet a lot of these people and work with them. And so that was a lot of the paranormal world. At that time, though, I really wasn't dealing with too many harmful, unwanted energies, or that. And it wasn't like the main thing that I was dealing with at that time. Although I know that a lot of the things that happened to me, I believe now, I really know that they were correlated with like a time frame, a timeline, from my timeline, what was to stop me and what was to have me keep going, and to do the work that I ended up doing and do the work I'm doing now. I just believe that everything that we do in our life has a reason. Like and there are forces that would like to stop us from doing some of the things that we are supposed to do in our future. And I believe that that is, what was actually occurring. So it ended up, as I met my husband, Joseph Benedict, who is an artist, he, at that time, when I met him, he was actually running, or a part owner, however you want to call it, in a haunted attraction business here in Tucson. And it was like, it was a really big popular thing people went to. And that's how I met him. But so that's when I really started getting involved with really some bad spirits that were actually connected to Joe. But I also met a lot of some cool medicine men and women, Ho'oponopono people that we worked with our land as that progressed, and with ourselves as that progressed. So it kind of came full circle into where I live now, because I ended up moving onto the land that he owned.
Mhm.
And that had its own set of historical information just tied into the land, a lot of terrible trauma, terrible tragedy, but a lot of amazing Native American spirits, and any type of people that were here on that land at that time that have decided to stay on the land in one way or the other in their energy forms. And so that kind of puts me into today, where I have experience and the blessing of having some exorcisms on this property and the family. But I believe that what was more of a deliverance is for the family, myself included, and the exorcism was of the land, especially when we talked to our mutual acquaintance, Bishop Joshua
Yes.
Spark. Yes. And so, like, when I started to work, and I am the co-producer of The Unseen Realm, which Archbishop Ronald Fell Enright is the host and creator of, he asked me to be the producer. So I knew I couldn't handle that job on my own. So I reached out to a friend of mine whom I met from Reverend Bill Bean and his show. And he is actually the person that helped us with our deliverance and exorcism from the ministry, his ministry. He helped us here. So I became a person that worked for him. I didn't work for him, but I donated my time to help him in any way possible I could on his podcast. And that's how I met Archbishop Ronald Fell Enright. And
Which
so
that's an interesting story and an interesting connection there. I was
yeah,
going to
and
say
there,
that
yeah, go ahead.
you mentioned earlier all the things that you went through. There's precedence for that. People
Yes,
have a tendency to, a traumatic experience, a near-death experience, seems to activate any sort of latent sensitivity they have to spiritual things. And in your case, where you've already had a connection to spiritual things, then this trauma could have been a catalyst that jump started everything, so to speak. And
yeah.
I'd be interested to hear as well about how much of this your son picks up on.
Right. So at that time, Tristan, my son, was 9 when that accident happened.
Mhm.
And so 9 or 10, I can't remember exactly which one, but yes. And so thankfully he was not hurt. He had like one cut on him, but yes. So Tristan, then at the property that I was working at was a beautiful property in the West Tucson mountains.
Okay.
And then it was at a home-based office, right? So it wasn't in the city, so it was on this beautiful land that was very much spiritual land, very very spiritual land. Anyway, so Tristan would start to say, like, I just saw an Indian. And we're like, what? And so like and so then as I started to talk to others, they say, yes, that there is like a Native American Indian that appears a lot to people. And so he saw them before I did. And so I started to then see them as I progressed after the second one myself. But like I said, it was more like going into progressions of different levels. But Tristan was able to tune in to see that. And Tristan has always had the abilities very intuitive abilities. In fact, so he and I were very close, and I took him with me to a lot of these places that I trained at, or was privileged to have people around that would be talking with me. Um, as far as what is happening with him now, he is 26 years old, and I have to be very careful and cautious with him because of the things that happened on the property. He did not live here at the time, but when I moved here, and so his dad and he were in Wilcox, Arizona. Now, so all of this is actually public information, because they just so happened to had moved in here with Joe and I about 6 months before the investigation, well, before it was even confirmed that there would be an investigation here on our property from the Dead Files television show, which was on the Travel Channel at that time. And when they moved here, it was just kind of a fluke, because a tornado of all things hit the property in Wilcox, and they lost their home. And so they came here just to stay for a while, and we ended up actually enjoying them being here. We had a little house they could live in, but I did not discuss with them too much about what was happening on the property at that time. So they got to see firsthand what was happening with the spirits here. I mean, literally, this is a highly active place. And even after after we had it cleared, I still continued to have our great investigation team out here, and they kind of made it into they called it their training. This is like their training hub, because everything is so highly active. Now, I have stopped that the last year because I felt as if it was too much for my son, who is very intuitive, and I didn't want to take the chance on bringing anything that might disrupt the family again. So I decided, Joe and I decided that we would put a halt on that. I mean, we're still very highly active, but we do a abundance of prayers. I mean, ritual prayers daily. I mean, all the time. And so we believe that we have it pretty secure here. But I know that if we let down on those prayers ever, that it will come back. So we have like a force shield of God's prayers everywhere.
Well,
literally,
when you say it that way, it assumes that if it's guarded against something. So what? As much as you can share, what exactly happened on this property in your experience?
Right. Well, for the horrible things was there was a man, so we call it the Shadow Man, literally. We call him the Shadow Man, and there's all kinds of shadow people here, but I was privy to actually see them. So I would document with the different people that would come out here, and the shadow people would be there's very, very scary stuff. So I mean, like, I would have these horrible nightmares of these entities, like literally trying to kill me at night in my dreams. So I was getting thrown around the room screaming in my dreams. So that went on for so long. But I was still, yeah, it was very terrifying. And so then when they lived in the house we have the cabin, like the Shadow Man would come through in right with them sitting here, or laying here at night, and then Mark they would just kind of, they touched you. There's children here too. We had multiple children sightings. Myself, you could hear them laughing. You could hear them talking, and then there'd be nobody there, but luckily I could see them a lot of the time, and I would draw them. So when I could see them or different things, I would always try to make sure everybody tried to draw what they saw. And the Shadow Man was the scariest person. So it all ended up being really understood once they did have that actual Dead Files investigation, because then it made sense because there were apparently, I would see Joe. Things would happen to us, like they would jump us literally where we weren't ourselves. Like I would felt like I was in a comatose or I couldn't move. We had to have people called out just to help me because I couldn't. It was like I was not able to move at all, and then it was had to be removed from me. So there is a huge, huge long story, and that's why I ended up finally, after it took me several years, but I was able to piece it all together and create a documentary, which I call Shadows of the Desert. So it's kind of interesting you call your show Shadows. So I called it Shadows of the Desert mainly because I kind of liken it to they are the shadows, but there's also good spirits here too.
Mhm.
So I believe it was a fight between the good and the evil because right when I got here, I always felt like I knew this was my home. As I was driving down this road I'd never been before, I felt that. And I always saw these Native Americans that were very good. And we worked on the offerings for the land to try to fix things. Like if you started to dig or do any type of repairs or create a fence, all hell would break loose on the property. And I'm talking about like our cars would just instantly break down. We would start fighting. It was almost like you were just overwhelmed with things that would occur to this on this property and to our lives. It was a mess. A lot of people see my life now and they think, God, she's just got all this great stuff, all this, oh, look, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But before, it was a fight. And I was still I would go to work and I'd work on people and then I'd have a break and I'd come out here and I'd have to deal with what was here. But I always felt very strong and like I was winning. But it seemed like really at the last part of it in 2019, at that last part of the year, I started to really get overwhelmed and not feeling well. And I had people looking at me and trying to help me. And we knew that I was being spiritually attacked. We knew I was getting attacked. And different people would talk about what was happening in my system. Um, some of my mentor people. And it ended up that when they came here, what they found was she saw that thing had been hovering over me and was plugged into my lower abdomen. And when I saw this picture of what she had seen, this is a person that sees spirits, Amy Allen, and I'm like, oh my God, because that is an image that I had seen. I had seen this thing, that thing that was over me, but I thought I was mistaken. So I write about this in my book. I call it because it was like a fairy tale belief that everything is okay just because it looks like it is. Everything is perfect. There's nothing to be afraid of because it's all wispy and it's all happy, like a happy spirit. But it portrayed itself to me as a happy spirit energy. And I never knew that it wasn't. I thought it was good, but it wasn't. It was that thing.
Well, there are
And so,
numerous
yeah.
instances where people share that type of actually you could call it parasitism because this entity is feeding off you all the while trying to placate you, make you think that nothing bad is happening when it's eroding your soul.
Yes, that's what was happening, and my physical being, and that was like when I literally thought when they came here to help us that I thought she would like be able to fix it. I really did. So when I was told no, we can't fix this, you all need to get out, you need to leave. I was so shocked because I'd watched that show for years, and
Mhm.
I couldn't even believe they were actually standing in my living room and came out to do the investigation. And
Well, yeah,
for them to tell me that, I was literally that's like when people watch that show, I can't stand to watch it because I see the horror I was going through and I see my reaction, and literally it's a horrible moment in my life. I'm glad it happened. I think that it was a catalyst and needed to happen, but it wasn't the best time in my life,
well, no,
for
of
people to
course
see
not.
me in public.
You would think that you'd have to be feeling a large amount of betrayal
Oh,
and
yeah.
and of course
It was,
fear because you're living in a dangerous situation, and
yeah.
a laundry list of other emotions to be. And as you said, you thought things were okay, and then all
Yeah.
of these horrible things dumped on you. That had to be a difficult weight to bear.
It was because, I felt like at that time, I had a great clientele list. I worked on people. I just started really kind of branching out my remote view work, helping others
Mm.
from across country. And I mean, I was very confident, but it wasn't much long after that occurred. So this was in November is when we heard that
Mhm.
2019. Well, what happened right after, of course, was the pandemic. And that instead of me going off to work every day and everybody else at that moment in time, we were shut in, in this, well, it was hell then. We were shut in hell basically, and that it just really did get worse. And the worst part then happened. I had more family members because of the pandemic had to move in an emergency situation. There were children involved. So
Right.
it just seemed to get really worse that whole year with the children and
Mhm.
me not feeling well and me feeling as if I could not trust what I was doing with working on people. I mean, it didn't matter because my business had been shut down. Our work had been shut down because of the pandemic. So basically, I was just home. It was some of it was good, some of it was bad, but it was really when I reached out. Finally, I really decided we are under demonic attack. I mean, they never really would say it on the dev files. Nobody would ever say it. Nobody, all the people that had tried to help us would never go there.
Well, you
And
acknowledge something. Uh,
yeah,
when you acknowledge
they
something,
won't
you make it real.
acknowledge that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, when you acknowledge something, you make it real. And perhaps the fear was if they acknowledged it, that somehow it might attach to them as well.
Right. I,
But
I don't know. I think a lot of people just don't want to admit there is such a thing. They think
well,
it can just be, you know what I mean?
I was having a conversation just last night with a couple of friends of mine. And one friend had asked the other friend if he thought a lot of the resurgence in paranormal activity might be due to demonic influence. And there exists an extreme possibility that it is. Um, and then it's the misdirection and the confusion and everything that a person feels in your situation. As a journalist, I try to think of the questions that everyone is going to ask while I'm talking to the person that knows. Uh, and some of those questions that people ask are very considerate and well thought out. And some of these questions can be mean. And as we're talking here, it occurred to me that somebody along the line is going to ask, well, if you're an energy manipulator, if you can do remote viewing, how come you didn't see this first?
Right.
So now, from me personally, my opinion of that would be is that the first thing is you're too close to the situation, and added into that is the possibility that these are several different skills or skill sets. And just because you're good at one doesn't necessarily mean you're good at the other, or that you even have that skill set. But why do you think that it took someone from outside to come in to determine what was going on?
Um, I think that little by little, all the variations of people helped piece the puzzle together. I
Yes.
think it was just part of what it was supposed to be. I really do. I think it was all like part of the synchronistic plan because every little piece of information, even my abilities and non abilities
Okay.
of what I could and what I couldn't do, and what I believed was right and what really wasn't right is the fact that I just think it was all part of how it was late to plan. It's like that when you look back and you're like, wow, I didn't understand that then, but I sure see it now. I understand
Exactly.
that it was all meant to be in a way to go through the whole process of really understanding this one thing is like, who is the one that could remove it all? Who is the greatest God of all that could actually remove it all? Was it Buddha? No, they tried all the, we tried that kind of stuff, the Buddhist mentality.
Okay.
Didn't work. Even the Native American stuff, which would work, because I, do all of it. I love that. I love the saging, and I love great blessed Mother Earth. And I mean, that's like part of my field too. But even though that, it could only take it away for times, and then it would come back. Everything would only last for a few days, and then something would come back. You knew it wasn't gone. And how I knew it wasn't gone was because things just continued. But so what happened was, when I reached enough to where I reached out to, I saw this prayer group thing. It was with Dave Schrader, who I didn't even know who he was, but I thought I was gravitated to it. And ends up, he's a paranormal investigator on TV. I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
I know Dave. Dave's a good guy. He's a class act.
Yeah. So I somehow it was like spirit led me to this prayer thing, that he says prayers all the time, right? For people. Well,
Yes.
he ended up speaking to me. He messaged me when I sent him a prayer, and he was very nice, and he helped me. He directed me to this was because I was also looking for a priest. And at that time, I tried to find a priest that would help. None of them would. In fact, I felt like I was kind of treated badly. It was the pandemic, and they couldn't come out and things like that. But so that's where I was like, well, I need a priest is what I need. So he sent me he referred me to a person in California, and I just felt like that wasn't the right person. It was very expensive, and I just didn't feel like it was I just didn't feel like it was the right choice. But it was because of that prayer and my putting it out there and him putting it out there, I received a message from someone I did not know. And that person said, I just read your prayer, and I think you should contact Reverend Bill Bean. And I'm like, who's that? So I'm like, okay, I will look him up. And I had never heard of Reverend Bill Bean either. And so I found that he was also, I don't know if I looked him up. Yeah, sure I did. But so I did reach out to them, and I ended up receiving a message back from his assistant, Melinda, who right away, I just felt like this huge connection, oh my gosh, I feel like I've connected with somebody that cares and that is really going to help somehow. I just felt connected to her. She ended up sending me a lot of his prayers, which
Yes.
was very religious. I mean, they're very, bringing in Jesus. And all this time, people had told me a little bit, a few of my friends, or few people actually, if I think about it, just two, had mentioned, you and Joe need to bring in Jesus into your life. Well, we weren't. And I was raised a Christian. I was raised Methodist, but I just wasn't. And so we started to say these prayers, the specific ones that she had given us, and things started to lighten up. Well, so I'm like, okay, well, we need to talk to Bill, but we never actually set an appointment up. It took months before we actually really did. We just continued with the prayers and slightly talked to him, but things felt lighter. And then he also had the prayer, the Warrior Mode show. So I started to watch him, and I really started to see, wow, I really think he's real. He's a nice man. And he put me on the prayer list, our family on the prayer list. And so this was into December of 2020. And so as it progressed, it ended up that we did call him. I said, I wanted him to come here. I thought we need him to come here, but he couldn't because of the pandemic.
Yes.
So I said, all right, we'll try it. And so it was like all hell broke loose on the property the day we had it planned. I mean, it was like insane. Even Joe and I started fighting right up to the moment. All of the stuff wouldn't even work. The electricity was going out. It was like chaos.
It
But we
seems that
got on that phone. It was insane, but we got on the phone with him and we had our little computer thing, and um he he talked to us, he started doing the prayers. I think I filmed some of that as we walked around, because we had to go in through the property into all the little houses, and some of them we couldn't do because we had family here that would not participate. So I think what happened was, why it took 3 times and 3 different time frames was because we had to clear sections of the property at one. The house was the main one. Then we had Joe's shop. And then another one was out here, but we had to wait on this little cabin that I'm sitting in right now. And so it took different layers of times as we were able to progress to finish the whole thing. But once the whole thing was actually finished and all of the entities were removed, then our life completely changed. Our life has literally changed. Even the property completely changed. So when I look back in the question, I kind of rambled, but
Well, that's
when
okay.
I look back and I say, why couldn't I understand it then? I couldn't understand it because I was in the belief that I didn't have to question these things. And then I think they figured it out that yes, I had some sort of authority to remove things, but yet I was, that's when they figured out how to really trick me. And they just, it was a sly, but they are sly, aren't they? And they're very sly. And
Definitely.
so it
I
was
look.
taking me a year to figure out. Once Bill and I met Bill, then I stopped working on people. It was still pandemic, but because of what happened and because of the fact that he could take them away and I couldn't figure it out, I felt as if I could not put my family in jeopardy. I could not do anything working with people. So I actually stopped doing that work. And
And
I
that might have
worked.
been their goal all the way along.
Yes. Oh, I think so. I think it was. They
Well, you,
got their goal. Yeah. But you know what happened? And I watched Bill. So I started to study what Bill was doing. I studied about Jesus. I studied about that. It took me a while. And it was when I met Archbishop Ron that he really said some stuff that made me realize, like, what? Because, Carl, they say, even like Bishop Joshua and yourself, that there are gifts of spirit, and that in the unseen realm or the order of exorcists, they work with people that have gifts that can see.
well, yes, because not everyone has every gift.
Right. But
Or
that's
maybe
why.
just
So
all
when
right.
I realized that, when I started to hear that, and I started to really, I was like, no, okay, as long as I have as long as I do the right prayers and I use discernment and I strengthen myself and I keep everything strong and I make very confident. So a little by little by little, I started to feel like, okay, I can do this again. I can work on people this way again. And I do, but I don't take on any big cases, like super bad cases like I would before.
Hmm.
So I mainly just really focus on, and I've told people now, like, I am, it's, my gifts really are about helping the body if you're in pain. I mean, really, that's where it started. So
Yeah.
I really try to focus on, sometimes people will say, well, can you see this? And I'm like, and I used to fall into that, but now I don't. I say, no, I want to focus on what is happening in the body. Let's see those patterns. Let's remove what that is, because I work with people that have tinnitus. And so I can see the patterns that's happening in the ear. And we can go through those patterns or different things. So I'll quit talking now, but I just want you to know that's because of that, and like Archbishop Ron and even Brother Joshua, being around them, you just feel like you understand and learn really how to face the demonic forces and have used discernment.
Well, the first step, of course, is to eliminate that subconscious disbelief. It's been said before that the greatest thing the devil ever did was to convince people he wasn't real.
Right.
So you can rationalize this away and call it something else, and just that disbelief will make it so much more difficult to deal with anything that's happening, and it creeps up on you by the time that you were actually aware that it might be external sources. Your eyes, honestly, at least metaphorically, had been clouded. There's a symbiosis, obviously, between the body and the mind, and there's a direct correlation of what happens to one happens to the other. If you feel bad, it's harder to think. If your thoughts are scattered, you're not going to feel good. These two things need to work together. And any entity, whether it might be demonic or otherwise, that can separate the components of a person and make those components work against themselves, it's easier to get what they want from that individual.
Right. And then, they, what I think, what really was getting me was the attack started. It started like attacking onto the family members. And so at the worst part of it, the family was being, it was divide and conquer.
Yes.
And the only way to really have gotten to me at that point was to just go right in and do that, because that would have really kind of destroyed me. And so and I knew that's what it was. So it took me, I've had to really become a fighter, and I have, but I tell you what, it's my base of prayer all the time. Like we actually even have our like secure border. Like we have property. So when you go in, there's one gate. We have we stay at that one gate, and I think I do mention this in the documentary. I don't think I mentioned in the book, but in the documentary I do, because we stop at that gate. We do that Lord's Prayer, and we've done that since 2020. And then we come back, drive through the second gate, and then we come to the house. And before we step into the front steps, we stop and we do our Lord's Prayer there too. And if Joe comes in the back way through his shop, he stops and does. Still to this day, anytime we leave, we do that, and come back, we do that. And so, plus we have our nightly prayer. That one thing we learned from the building that I think made a huge difference in our relationship to Joe and I was we were pitted against each other for a while. And we started to be on our hands and knees every single night. We pray, we kneel and pray together every single night, and we say our prayers, and we do our deliverance prayer. Basically, we do our protection prayer, spiritual warfare prayer, and the Lord's Prayer, and then pray for everybody too. But between he and I think we bound together to fight. Instead of them being able to separate us, it was through the Lord's Prayer and this prayer time that he and I started to rebuild our relationship as two, as one, and they couldn't divide us anymore. So so all of these things, that's what I mean. Like when I try to talk about it, I try to tell people, like, all the things I have done in my life, all the people and all the ways I've tried to help people or learn. What really was the only thing that would help was when we did this. It's all documented. It's all like real evidence. Like God came in and God took this and changed everything. And it was only through God and Jesus that actually occurred. And even the Native American spirits, I found out a huge secret that even the mayor and the archaeologist, they did not know what I found out. Now I haven't even shared it, but it was common. It was in the records of the documents, on government documents, but nobody really found it because it was like buried. But it was I found out information in regards to what this land actually was, and where there was a huge Hohokam village, which the spirits had always told me there was. They'd always said that, and I know that that's why it was like I was meant to come here, and I was like the only one who would look. I wouldn't let it go, you know. So there was a Hohokam village on our property, a whole swath of 4 to 5 miles. This land was, and it was covered up in documents because of the missile silos that are in our area.
I see. Yes. Well, now that would be honestly a reason to cover up things if you're hiding missiles out there. So,
Exactly. We're right in the midst of bunches of this was where the missile silos were during the Cold War. So out here at that time, this was nothing but just land, desert land. It had become farmland. So this is all ranch land. And it's still ranch land, but now we're starting to progress. There was actually a little airfield too. So and I found that out too. I just, as I was getting the documentary ready, we knew there was an old airfield. I mean, people said, "Oh, there's an old airfield right just down like a mile from us."
mhm.
And so when I looked for it, like, oh, that wasn't just an airfield. That was like a special training area that this whole area was with the government. There's so much involved here that was secret because it was so desolate. There was nothing
Well,
here.
and that's well, when you
It's
hide stuff,
crazy. It's like it's a huge
it is.
story.
Eventually, everything is found, and one might say
Yeah.
eventually it could be 10 years or 10,000 years, but eventually things will come to light. Now, you've whetted our appetites for this story. Where do people find this documentary?
Okay, so the great thing is through my work with the Mercedez Lucke Benedict show, which is what I had, before I decided I think God just said, like, do this let's let that go and start explaining the unexplainable with Bishop Joshua. I interviewed a filmmaker who was referred to me. And so I actually shared it on Facebook today because his name is Derek Young. When I interviewed Derek Young, it's like the week a year ago that I interviewed him or whatever. But when I met him, I mentioned that I had been making a documentary, and it was like God spoke and said to him, well, let's see if I can help you. And so he did, and he didn't do anything, but he referred me to a documentary distribution company, which I was just everything I do, I just try to go with what the plan. I see the nugget and I try to move toward the nugget, but that's what happened. And so I sent the guy an email and he said, well, let's look at it. So I submitted what I had and he loved it. He said, you need to fix this or do this because it wasn't ready for distribution. I'd never made it that far in anything. I didn't even know what to do with that. So it took several months to get it completed. And with the help of the filmmaker, he ended up stepping in and helping me get it ready. So I went when Bishop Joshua went to Defeating the Demonic. Well, I went too, and I was able to play the first portion of that documentary on the big screen in Connecticut on the big Bijou Theater. So it was a huge deal for me. But this documentary, it's taking forever now because it's in their hands. It went through the processes, but now I guess it takes several months as they work to put it out and get it ready to be on. It will be on like all different things. It will be for sale, or it'll be, they just a whole distribution thing. It's called Worldwide Multimedia, and they have a documentary series group of films along with their other ones. So it gets, it could literally end up being in Walmart. I don't know. The other guy's films are in Walmart. So Derek,
I mean,
Derek
then
Young
that would be huge. There are a lot of Walmarts on the planet, so that would
yeah,
be a
and
good
but they're all
distribution line.
yeah. So it's a big distribution company. So it looks to me like it's probably not. I'm not going to say it'll be done according to what the time frame is. It might be December before it's actually out.
I see.
So yeah, I was hoping it might be, but apparently that's some. But at least I'm just thankful it went to that level. I mean, whatever God needs it to do, I'm happy with whatever, even if it's just making it that far is pretty good, pretty great. I have a second one that I need to start filming that is going to talk more about the exorcisms and the deliverances. That one I filmed was just an overall of what happened. And then I bought other footage and things that I'll start creating the second one, which is it will be called Ghosts in the Dark, which a lot of this stuff I write music to. So my songs and my music I wrote during that time I write about the spirits and what they said. So all my music, I started producing my music at home during the pandemic. We started our own studio. So we produce everything here on the property. And so the music, you can find my music. Well, one of my songs plays on The Unseen Realm every week. It's the ending song, A Better You. And they have a piece of that. That song's literally made it to different shows. It's just got its own, a life of its own too. But all my music you can find on all music streams. You can put in my name and they'll come up, but they're on Apple and iTunes. And there's a song called Shadows of the Desert, which I wrote just as I was finishing this documentary, which is called Shadows of the Desert. And it's a great song. It's called Shadows of the Desert. And I created the video. And it's about how the spirits communicated. And it's about how it's the fight between good and evil. And it tells the story in the song. So, and the video does too. I did my best to create as much visual of the video as I could in the song that I wrote. And so that's part of it. So what, being here today, I was hoping I could say my book, the remote viewing book would be ready like this week. But it looks like I've still got a little bit more editing to do on that. And then the process of getting it self-published or putting it onto this thing called Ngram Sparks to publish it, which it will go all over the place then, I guess. I'm not sure. I think you have written a book, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe sometime you can help me with that part because I'm trying to work on that.
We'll sit down and swap knowledge, difference between video podcasts and publishing and stuff like that. But in the meantime, can people I don't know, maybe check out your Facebook page or your web page to find out what's going on?
Yes. So my Facebook, everything's under my name, Mercedes with a Z, Lucke with an E, Benedict. And we also have a 501c3, which is another big deal that's happening right now. I will mention it. It's becoming bigger than we thought. And that's my husband. He has created this incredible interactive art thing with and the 501c3 took me a while to create. God told me to create it, so I started, and it took a while, but it is to help bring awareness to the animals, to the wilderness, to the planet. It focuses on the Sonoran Desert, but it's pretty much anyone. But it's for my love for animals and wildlife and nature. And so Joe ended up creating like these giant sculptures that move, that people can make move, their wings move. And it's become it's a big hit in the Tucson Botanical Gardens. And so
that sounds amazing.
You can, it's just such a blessing. So I've been trying to get press for that, and it's working, and they just love him, and it's a big part of us. So that you can find out more information. If you want to be a participant in that, it's My Beautiful Spirit Productions is our 501c3. So I have a YouTube channel that shares the videos. My YouTube channel, Mercedez Lucke Benedict, also shares all of my videos, my music. I promote my shows. And then we've got Joe's show, which is called Beautiful Spirit Interactive Art in Motion. And that is the actual show that we want to take the show on the road. So we've been given the green light to go ahead and just get these things going to where we can start actually taking them to other places and build more of them. So it's happening a year earlier than we thought.
So I think that's
So,
fantastic. I mean, I think a lot of people would respond positively to
oh,
things like that.
yeah, they just love it. And so I have a lot of that. I have these shorts on the YouTube and big videos about it. But I created a coloring book. Because of that, I was inspired to create a coloring book of his characters. Now, and they match the characters like the butterfly. So there's a butterfly, there's a dragonfly, there's this giant hawk bell that is the guardian. So they match his sculptures, but yet this is for the kids because a lot of these sculptures are for kids. I mean, kids can do them as well as adults. They can run these interactive sculptures.
Was that
And
the best
so,
time to get people interested is when they are
yeah,
children?
yeah. So creating a color book, and they absolutely, and the botanical garden loved it. So I get to sell it there or sell it to the botanical garden. That is almost done. I've got it completed. I'm hoping it will all be in the computer and finished on Ingram Spark in the next 2 days, where it'll start going out to, I can get it printed. So that's definitely coming, and it's just a lot is happening. And then I'll just say we got our new show that I actually love this format. It's called Explaining the Unexplainable, and it's with me and Bishop Joshua Sparks. And we get to delve more into what you're talking about. We get to talk about all, like when we had you on the show, we got to
Well,
talk
yes,
about
I
all
was going to
kinds
say,
of things.
I had the pleasure of being on that show. Yes.
Yeah. And so it goes so fast. I like your format where so as I'm just talking and I don't have to worry about what I look like. Because
Yes.
everything has to be visual now. So we have to it's just
Well,
this working, is it fuzzy looking, is it clear?
what I try to do is eliminate any kind of impediment to people just being able to tell their story.
So good. It's
So,
really, yeah, I feel very comfortable. I,
thank you.
I,
I'm glad you do.
I will say though, I every single time I start to talk about what happens, like bringing it up, it is very hard for me to talk about it. Still to this day, I I I I don't talk about it that often, and it took me years even when Bill. I really didn't talk too much. We did the Dead Files thing, and
Mhm.
then we didn't talk about anything. And then once Bill got me on his Warrior Mode show, and that's when I started to actually kind of share what was happening. And then I started talking more. But every single time I have to talk about what we went through, it was very traumatic. I'm just so thankful that I'm here now, and then I'm safe, and then our property's blessed now. Don't I'm just God did that. God is the only one that could save us. And I will shout that. I will sing that. I will share that for the rest of my life. That's what happened.
Well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because you were in a horrible situation, and that was what got you out of the horrible situation. So, um,
Exactly.
and it's a question, I guess, a fundamental question of faith, and not to be arguing for or against any religion, but when a person has faith in something, amazing things happen.
So true. But I think that the keys were that to this particular story this was a demonic, even the man that was here, that was the murderer on the property that was found. Like, I didn't know, there's all buried information. He was even called the devil killer. So and there was satanic rituals. There was a satanic curse on this land, and that's why the reason why nobody would put it that way, but it ended up being that when you go back in time and you learn about what had happened on this land, you realize that there was a satanic rituals happening throughout time in the old days.
Yes.
This was not the new time. This was the Hispanic Mexican people came here, and the Indians were here. So really it was the first ones that came here to move these Native Americans were Spanish. So they had their culture of, and the Santeria and the different
Yes,
things that were
exactly.
held in the, yeah. So, and then there was these, the priests, the Spanish priests and the different people that came, which is all historically documented. There, it ended up being, that was what, that's why, because we had to go into that. We had to go into what was that? What were those spirits? You see, I believe these spirits, they have their way, you know?
Yes.
Like if we went to India, then there's more. They have the India spirits there, you know, they're all like in that religion. And I really think that we had to take it to that level to find out what it was that was cross tying this land with the Native Americans.
Well, now I'm glad that you were able to have that situation rectified and that you're no
Yeah.
longer suffering under that. And more importantly, that suffering won't continue. It always did bother me when I was watching these paranormal shows when somebody says, "Oh, I just couldn't handle it anymore. I sold the house and left." I'm like,
Yeah.
so you sell a home you know is toxic to
Yeah.
somebody else so you can run away. I mean, and I've told my wife this before. I said, if I thought it was terminal, I would burn the house to the ground, salt the earth so that no one could ever use it. But
Right.
but to just walk
Right.
away and leave basically that trap, that bomb, that toxic landfill essentially for someone else to deal with.
Right.
I don't think I could do that. I mean, faced with the situation, maybe I would have to make that choice, but I would like to think I would want it handled. So,
Yeah. And I think, you know, now they even have like some states you have to tell whether the property is, and some haunted and some don't. I remember Joe saying that on the ending of the Dead Files. Well, we got a house, you know, because we decided at that moment, he's like, yeah, we need to move, because that's what she'd said. So it was some sort of kind of almost a silly joke that he said, but I think they put it on the show. But it's like, you know, a lot of people want to buy haunted houses now if you tell them they want to.
well,
but
yeah.
but now,
Well,
but
I
working with
think
people, yeah, they don't want haunted houses. It's very bad.
no. I remember my first season. I interviewed a very interesting gentleman named Doug Waller, and he had written I think 5 books on the subject of Sasquatch. And he said that people were having a discussion. Someone said they had Bigfoot on the property, and then another person chimed in and said, "Oh, I wish I had Bigfoot on my property." And Doug is like, "Well, maybe not." You might encounter the gentle giant, then you might encounter the savage beast. So you have to be careful what you wish for.
Right, exactly.
And it's
Exactly.
always best to be cautious. But
Yeah, so
so
true, so
so
true.
so to clarify all this, people can find you on Facebook and find you through what was the name of your website again?
It's my name, Mercedes Lucke Benedict.
Okay. So they
And and even on that, and when you go to that website, I'm
yes.
also now I'm a nationally board certified teacher. So I have 7 new classes that I'm teaching this year.
Well, Mercedes, thank you very much for being on the show. And I'm sure we've all enjoyed everything that you've had to share with us and look forward to seeing more. So, to help the listeners and put everything in one little capsule, so to speak, give me a breakdown on all the things you do online that people can follow.
Okay. Well, we've got the Mercedes Lucke Benedict. Basically, you go there and you find all kinds of things. You'll find out all the shows or different interviews I've had, or the shows and interviews that I've done with people. So that's a big thing. And then my YouTube channel is filled with all kinds of my music videos or my shows or the different things that I promote. And you can find from my website, it also takes you into the different categories where you can find our nonprofit, My Beautiful Spirit Productions. And then you'll also find where people can look for the classes that I teach, which I have 7 that I have for the year that I'm going to be doing at ASIS Massage here in Tucson
Yes.
as a certified teacher. So I'm not there all the time because I actually work at Dove Mountain Chiropractic on clients. So that'll be a little part-time thing that I could help. I really want to start helping teach people what I do, the special techniques that I have used so these are special technique classes. So those are the places, and you can find my music on any online format like iTunes and Apple Music and Sound, just all that. So basically, when you put my name in, I pull up all different ways.
Okay. Now, one of the questions I was wanting to ask you earlier, I know that you know, and you interact with a lot of people who are exorcists and demonologists, but are you involved directly in doing any of that yourself?
I was, and I will still help people if needed. But yes, I was called to do that through my work accidentally, just because they would pop up. I'll never forget the time where one time I was working on a lady that my boss had brought in because she was having trauma. And as I'm working on her and doing some prayers in the session, she it came out of her, and her head swung around at me and said, "You'll never get in the dead body." Like that. And I was like, "Oh
It's
my
not
God." So
not
that,
terrifying at all.
no, I mean, it was like a completely, nice lady. And then all of a sudden I said some sort of a prayer, which I'm sure I don't think I did the Lord's Prayer, but I ended up doing that and binding and rebuking it, but I didn't know how to use those term and not that term at that time. So that was 2019 too. So I think everything was happening in 2019. But yes, so I remote view. I can see what's happening in people's property from how I learned with my property. And so I will do proper prayers to remove that. But since I am with the Order of Exorcists, and I actually am a member with it, but I really realized I realized the importance of what they know compared to and their doctrine. I
Yeah.
mean, I could literally be one. I mean, I could take the test or whatever and study that. And I actually thought about it. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, no, I think I'm good with what I have, but I will I will help people to remove energies and do that, and I will do my proper prayers, and it does work. It's just part of what I do. It's not 100% of what I do anymore, but I do that. Not to their extreme. I will not do it to that extreme. If it's something big like that, I will send them to them or Reverend Bill Bean or somebody else, and I won't take that on anymore.
I understand completely. To each his own gifts or her own gifts.
Yeah, I just don't. I feel like I can help in so many ways, and if it's an extreme case, then I personally do not want to put my family through anymore, so I won't take those extreme cases on.
Well, since we've been talking about that type of thing, what would be your first recommendation if someone was experiencing some sort of paranormal activity that they might think might be negative or actually demonic in nature? What would you advise them to do?
Well, so when that does come up, then I always immediately am prepared through in my prayer warriorness. I have
Mhm.
my prayers set so I can stay safe before when I start to work with, if I even hear the name or hear that, I go into that type of a prayer mode. And so if I'm to check into somebody and see that, then it depends on if it is something a severe thing, I would definitely recommend them to go to the Order of Exorcists that's what I would do now. But
Mhm.
they have a whole protocol, of course, you have to go through, and a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to just do the quick fix. I didn't know about the protocols at the originally until I got with the Order of Exorcists, but I definitely believe that people should do prayers I believe
Yes.
that people can sage their houses. They can do that, but salt is really important for removing some energies. And there's a whole list of things that people can do. And definitely removing that which is part of them. Like if you are if you are opening doors to the demonic by what you're doing, like alcohol is, if you're drinking a lot of alcohol, that's a door. So I try to go through what are the people, what is happening. If their spirit, which I believe is the connected spirit to God, if I'm in my safe place and I
Mhm.
can communicate, then I will sometimes, I get the message of what it is that they've done. What was a child abuse? Did that open up the door? Different things in their life. But yeah, if it's serious, I recommend we all go through a good process of finding the perfect team to help them.
But if someone were to reach out to you and say, for instance, I think I'm having this issue, you could point them in the right direction.
Oh, yes.
See, because
And
people
that's
like
part of
to,
my job, actually, with the
right?
order
Yeah.
of exorcists.
Well, see, people like to deal with known quantities, the people that they have connection with, even if that connection is tenuous. So
Yeah.
if they've listened to your story and feel like that you know what you're talking about, and
Yeah.
they have an issue, then they would probably feel comfortable reaching out to you first and having you refer them to someone else. That's
So
that's
true.
the whole
Yeah.
reason that I asked the question.
Oh,
And
very good.
and
Yeah.
I
Yes.
typically ask people, what would you say to people that believe and people that don't believe? But in this case, I mean, I think that if someone's reaching out to you, believing or at least acknowledging the possibility isn't really in question. So,
And not everything is demonic. A lot of things can be tied, into a connection that's with you. It doesn't necessarily have to be a demonic entity.
mm,
You can go to Walmart and get an attachment by an energy. I mean, they're everywhere. We live in their world,
right. And
so there
well,
are things you can do to
even
remove that.
even though there are 7 billion people on the planet today, there are still more dead people on Earth than living people. That's something to consider.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
and as a friend of mine, he's also been a guest on the podcast, Wes Forsyth said, he's, look, if someone was a jerk when they were alive, they're going to be a jerk after they're dead. so
Exactly.
a lot of negative spirits aren't necessarily demonic, but
Right.
the danger level though is exponential because if you
Yeah.
take a human spirit that has become negative, is still not as lethal and as dangerous as an entity that's thousands of years old and began badly.
Exactly. Exactly. And you know what's crazy? When we first started the Unseen Realm, one of my jobs was to actually take the people that were writing in and contact them. And so we did a lot of the first part of the show that we did was the interviews, and then we took those interviews in between into the panel. It's not what our format ended up becoming, but it was my job then to talk to all these people and do a Skype interview. And it was horrible. I mean, it was horrible for me to see exactly how many people are out there dealing with what I had to deal with. I was very thankful to be able to help and still am,
I'll
but
tell
just
you
to
something
interview
that
them over,
is.
yeah, it
Oh,
was just terrible.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
It's so funny, but it's just terrible what's happening to
but
people out there.
something that's even stranger and more disheartening is that most people never mention their brushes with the paranormal. So if you've heard from 1,000 people who have experienced paranormal activity, there's probably 5,000 that haven't said anything about it.
Oh my gosh, so true. And so the weird thing was, trying to say, well, we would like to be able to talk about this online. And of course, that was like a lot of doors. I don't blame them. They don't want their names to be,
Oh, no, of
told.
course not.
So yeah, yeah. So we had to do it, anonymously, but I then I saw how people reacted like, well, I don't want I don't want that. So and I don't blame it, because there is a stigma. I mean, like, literally, we didn't discuss it. Like, people were very surprised when it started to come out with us. But the people that did know, there was a lot of people that did know, and I did discuss it with them. But when the actual, world started to find out, it was surprising to people, that we'd actually talk. And the fact that I keep going and I never stop talking about it was like good, because I want people to understand that this is not just, this happens. This happens to people all the time, and people need to be aware of it and not call them crazy and stuff.
Well, you see, that's what I try to do. I try to give people a format to discuss something. And I don't try to prove it or disprove it. I'm sharing the story. And
exactly.
No one that's had a problem should be belittled because they say, hey, I had a problem. Can you help me? No one should ever be belittled for that, for whatever it is. So,
right.
But as I said before, it's been a really wonderful conversation. And thank you for being on the podcast. And
you're so welcome.
I'm sure that you're going to have some people reach out to you because they'll want more.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I look forward to hearing this when it comes out, and I'm thankful and happy to help anybody. And be sure, every Saturday, I forgot to say that, every Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we've got the Unseen Realm under Archbishop Ronald Fell Enright YouTube and Facebook, and Bishop Joshua is there. And so people can reach out and have their questions answered by this amazing panel of experts that we have on the show. So please feel free to reach out that way too.
And that would be wonderful. I think it would be a useful support tool for people who need to understand the things that they've experienced.
Oh, it's just fascinating. We have a psychiatrist, Dr. Adrian Finkelstein, too, of course, with Bishop Joshua. They're all it's about mental health, too. So I have learned so much about the correlation between mental health and, is it just mental health, or is it also in conjunction with an unwanted energy that's feeding off the mental health issue? So there's so much information that's given on the show that it's so powerful.
Well, there's always a large number of causality, and sometimes it might seem unrelated. And you mentioned Brother Joshua. He's also a licensed therapist as well, as having a doctorate in divinity. So Josh would be the man to talk to. I would highly recommend him. He's a sympathetic ear, a very intelligent person, and he, more than anything else, he wants to be helpful.
Right. He's wonderful. You're wonderful too.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I always like to hear that I'm wonderful.
And then I hope we can get you back on the show, on our show too.
Well, I look forward to it. Just anytime that you need someone to talk for an hour, I'm your man.
So awesome. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, you're very welcome. And in the meantime, I'm going to say have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to speaking with you again really soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and evening.
This is Charles Romans, and on behalf of myself and our guests, thank you for joining us on this walk through the shadows of legend. If you like what you heard, please follow us and visit our website at shadowsoflegend.com and support our Patreon page to help keep the content flowing. And if you would like to be a guest and share your own brush with a stranger paranormal, don't hesitate to email us and include a contact number. The strange and surreal, the normal and the paranormal are all aspects of the world in which we live. As you reflect upon the stories we have shared, keep in mind that the people sharing these stories are actual, real people just like us. Were the stories shared compelling enough to be given credibility, or should they be relegated to the deeper part of the shadows? But when determining this, it might be a good idea to keep an open mind, because when we look around, we might discover that our own world is less brightly lit than we once thought. Until next time, I'll be waiting for you in the shadows of legend.